Hello, hello everybody, and welcome to the official launch of the 2019 research report on the status of women on JSE-listed companies. My name is Lamona Raja, and I will be your MC today. I am currently the Diversity and Inclusion Leader for Cummins Africa Middle East, and I have been working with the 30% Club Southern Africa and Business Engage for the past 4 years. I have the great privilege of watching how the 30% Club and Business Engage have leaned into the new world that COVID-19 has catapulted us into. And so today is the very first time we're having this event in a virtual platform. So we'd like to thank the partnerships and people who have made this possible. A big thank you to the Eventcast Studio for this venue, the IODSA, and Tuesday Consulting. We have a really exciting lineup for you today. So let's take a quick look at our agenda. So we're going to start off with going through setting the scene. Then we're going to look at the research report. We are going to have a great lineup of speakers, which I don't think I'm going to give away right now. So I'd like to hand over to Malcolm Larson from Business Engage to set the scene before we get into the meat of today's session. Malcolm, over to you.
Lamona, thank you very much for that. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to you all. A special welcome for those who are joining us for the first time. It's great to have you all here. And we're back at the Eventcast studios. Very much getting to be a home from home for us at the moment. So thank you to the Eventcast team. Thank you very, very much also, whilst I'm doing the thank yous, to Fano Mateo. Fano does most of the hard work in putting this the research report together, and he has done for the last 3 years. So yeah, thank you very much to Fano for your help in that regard. When we do the research report, and this is the research report for 2019. Now, I don't want you to be concerned. The report is 2019. Don't think that you have gone back to 2019 and you have to relive 2020. I think for most people, doing 2020 once is bad enough. So don't worry about that. It's just the 2019 report. But when we look at the report and when we look at a lot of the work that we do, we like to look and see what is happening globally. That gives us quite a good grounding of what we're doing, where we're doing it, and how we should be doing it. So when we look at what is happening globally, we tend naturally also to have a look and see what's happening in the UK. Now, there's two main reasons for that. One is obviously the similarities between the UK and South Africa in the business environment, and there's a number of British companies or British originated companies within the JSE, but also there's a lot of good information that comes out of the UK market. Many of you will remember about 10 years ago, the UK government had concerns about the gender diversity at board levels at in the FTSE companies. So the government approached Lord Davis, put a commission together to look at what was happening on the FTSE 100 companies in terms of gender diversity. And Lord Davis decided that government must stay out of it and business themselves must decide how they were going to deal with it. And they came up with a solution that they were going to have voluntary targets of 25% of women on FTSE 100 boards and a couple of other incidental initiatives as well. And 5 years later, they were very, very, very close to achieving what they set out to achieve. After that, the government initiated the Hampton-Alexander Review. That again was a 5-year commission. Very unfortunately, very early on, Dame Alexander passed away, but they carried on with the review. and the last review comes up in about a month's time. They normally publish their reviews in November each year. And what I'd like to do at the moment is just have a look at the Hampton Alexander review from 2019. Not so much the detail of the review itself, but actually the foreword. Now, the foreword was written by two permanent secretaries, jointly written by two permanent secretaries in the UK government, which in itself tells a story. It shows the linkage between the UK government and UK business when it comes to gender issues, and especially gender issues on the board. That's something that perhaps we're not doing quite as well as we could do in South Africa, and maybe it's something that we should be looking at, although with everything that's on the go at the moment, maybe that's a little bit of a wish list. But anyway, they did the foreword for the 2019 report, and they noticed, it says that there are only 2 FTSE 350 boards made up of only men, and 42 that have only 1 woman on the board. Now, we're going to come back to that a little bit later on when we look at the main report. But what I would like to point out to you today is the next sentence. It says, the equivalent figures going back to 2011 look shocking now. Now, that's a very strong word, shocking. Maybe it could be worse. They're British UK ministers. Maybe it could be awfully shocking. But it's shocking. And I think the point that I would like to make is that change creeps up on us. We sometimes don't realise the change that we are in. And we look back over a couple of years and say, were we really in that position? Is that where we started from? And that is very much the case that we find ourselves in South Africa today with the JSE reports. This is only the 3rd report. We must understand that when we look back at it in a couple of years' time, we will probably as shocked as they are as to where we are at the moment. So I think we need to take cognizance of change and small change with regards to that. They then go on to say that the excuses that circulated around the difficulties of achieving diverse boards, they just don't wash. They're not being accepted anymore. The time of Lord Davis, when he first started the commission, everybody was saying, no, but the women aren't there, they're not available, we can't get them. Well, they actually proved that they were actually wrong. So those excuses have worn a little bit thin now. And apologies for those of you who attended the first launch that we did, if you remember, at the Ananda Club 2 years ago, and we looked at the 2017 results from the JSE. I noted then that in 2017, apart from doing the main review, Hampton Alexander came out with a supplementary report, which was the worst excuses that they heard from chairmen of boards of FTSE companies as to why they weren't embracing gender diversity at board level. Ladies and gentlemen, for your entertainment, 10 quotes from chairmen of FTSE 100 companies. Now, please remember these are actual quotes when the guys were doing the review. Quote number 1, I don't think women fit comfortably into the board environment. There aren't that many women with the right credentials and depth of experience to sit on the board. The issues covered are extremely complex. Most women don't want the hassle or pressure of sitting on a board. Are you listening, ladies? Shareholders aren't interested in the makeup of the board, so why should we be? These are actual quotes from chairmen of FTSE companies. My other board colleagues won't want to appoint a woman on our board. It's not me. I would love to. It's my colleagues. All the good women have already been snapped up. We have one woman already on the board, so we're done. It's somebody else's turn. We're going to come to the issue of one and done later on today. There aren't many vacancies at the moment. If there were, I would think about appointing a woman. I can maybe sympathise with that one just a little bit if they're not looking at the moment, but it's an excuse anyway. We need to build the pipeline from the bottom. There just aren't enough senior women in this sector. And the final one is, I can't just appoint a woman because I want to. Ladies and gentlemen, they were the excuses that were heard as to why you cannot put women on a board of a FTSE 100 company. And these guys are chairmen. Hopefully we have better leaders in this country and we don't need to listen to that. And I know that we've got better leaders because Lamona is going to speak now to a company that we know has got better leadership with regards to that. So Lamona, over to you, and I'll see you guys again later. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. And wow, I think I've heard these excuses a few times, but to be reminded with the 10 in a go is quite a treat. So thank you for setting that context and for letting us know why this kind of work is very important. Next up, we have the privilege of talking to the 2020 Gender Mainstreaming Champion, Balo World Limited. And I'm going to be joined by Tantaswa Fubu, who is the Group Executive of Human Capital for Balo World Limited. She is joining us over MS Teams. So, Tanaswa, are you there?
Yes, Lamona, I'm here.
Wonderful, great to hear your voice again. Hope you're doing well.
I am doing well. I've just fetched my daughter from school.
Oh, great. So, Tantaswa, congratulations once again on being awarded the 2020 Gender Mainstreaming Champions. Were you guys surprised to win?
Lamona, we had hoped to win, really. And the reason that we had hoped to win is we do work very hard on this. We are consistent in what we're doing in terms of gender mainstreaming, and we are very deliberate in what we do in our efforts. So we really had hoped to win. Thanks.
Well, congratulations once again. So your group board has achieved gender parity, and that includes a female chair. What role does this culture and visible gender diversity at the top play in achieving what you want to win within Balo World Limited?
It sets a tone from the top, and it's great for role modeling, because it even says to the skeptics that it is possible, and what we're talking about and what we're asking for is not a pie in the sky. It's something that is doable, and it's something that we can, it's something that we can achieve. So it really is quite, it's quite good for what we do to have the tone set from the top.
And what influence does this have on middle management and junior management in your organization?
It's quite interesting because having Neo as our chairman, Lamona, it says to young women at Balo World, anything and everything is possible. They can be who they want to be. They can be anything, really. Nothing stops them. And as we say in Balo World, that we can defy limits as women. You know, there is no limit that we cannot shatter. There are no glass ceilings that we should be afraid of as women at Barlow World. So it really gives a positive um, a space, and it really gives young women hope that what they want to achieve is achievable and within Barlow World, and that they will be given the opportunities within Barlow World actually to ensure that they achieve what they want to achieve. And I guess it's not just with the chairman. I think we have shown within Barlow World how we have done a whole lot of things for women and ensuring that women, you know, they are CEOs in the operations, which is something that has not happened previously. We have just now appointed the first woman CEO in the motor retail industry in South Africa. So we really, really are moving as far as that is concerned.
Wow, that's really fantastic. So it may be early days yet, but how will being 2020 gender mainstreaming champion affect your role as human capital executive, both internally and externally?
Internally, I doubt that it's affecting it that much, because I do believe that as Barlow Welders, we believe in what we're doing. We believe in the story that is unfolding before us. However, externally, what I have found, Lamona, is I'm starting to get people, my peers from other companies, starting to ask me, you know, how did we manage to do it? What challenges did I, specifically as the executive charged with this responsibility, what challenges did I have to, you know, confront? And what's the success factors, you know, that I can point to, and how long did it take for us to get to where we are? So there's a lot of coaching that's starting to happen with my peers in the private sector, and for me it is fine, because I believe we cannot we cannot compete on transformation. Transformation is something that we all need to do for the better of this country. So I'm not going to sit in a corner and want Barlow World to be the only transformed company.
That is fabulous, and I really believe that the collective effort in collaborating and sharing is going to be part of our success story. So, thank you for that. It is interesting that in 2018, Barlow World Equipment were the gender mainstreaming champions, and now in 2020, Barlow World Limited. Does this suggest that gender mainstreaming is more of a group issue now than it was before?
You know, Lamana, that's interesting, because I think there's a common thread in this. If you think about this, Dominic Siwela, our group CEO, was at Barlow World Equipment as a CEO for about 10 years before he became the group CEO. And when he was at Barlow World Equipment, he set himself and his leadership there quite stringent targets as far as gender mainstreaming. And you can see that his efforts over the years are coming to fruition, or came to fruition. And that's why 2018 Barlow World Equipment could get the award. And when he came over to the group in 2017, and that's when I joined Barlow World, and a whole lot of the executives that he has now joined, he started the journey that he had started at Barlow World Equipment, and we pushed that hard, and you can see the results. However, the difference with Barlow World as a group is that we did not give ourselves the luxury of time. We didn't say we have another 10 years. We looked at ourselves and said, as a South Africa, we have gained freedom post-apartheid, and it's about 20 years. So we could not say we have another 20 years. We needed to make a difference and make it quickly. So we put ourselves under pressure. And as I said, we were deliberate, we were consistent, and we put high targets. And lo and behold, In 2020, in March, we had achieved the targets that we had set for ourselves to achieve in September 2020.
Fantastic. So my next question, you seem to be preempting all my questions, Tanatswa. How long did that journey take? And what advice do you have for other companies that are still in the early stages of their journey?
I see now what you mean. So it's not an overnight journey, I must say. So and I guess because Dominic had started the journey early on in BWE in equipment, he had probably a 10-year lead in equipment. But what that did and the benefit that it did for us as a group is there were lessons learned in that 10 years. And there were lessons learned, but also there were lessons learned by us coming from other corporates to say what has worked and what has not worked. So when we sat in 2017 and said this is our strategy, we could say collectively what has worked and what has not worked. And we understood that one of the things that does not work is to set soft targets. Secondly, one of the things that we knew does not work is if you do not tie it to people's incentives, especially at a senior level position. Thirdly, we knew that if you set your targets at lower levels and not at senior levels, it's not going to work, because you want to set it at senior levels such that it is at senior levels where you set the culture and the tone. It is at senior levels where the decisions and actions of the company are taken. So you want to change from the senior and downwards. So we brought all of those experiences that we had together and ensured that they informed the strategy as we went forward. I remember, Lamona, when I went around to the divisional executives in 2017 and saying, by 2020, we need to be 40% women across the senior levels of the organization. And people looking at me and saying, I am foolish because we do not have time. My retort was, we have had so much time. We've wasted 20 years that we could have done this and done it correctly with no one, being behind us and making sure that they're pushing us. So now we do not have that time, and we need to ensure that we do this and we do it right. So we were unrelenting. We knew we were going to be challenged, but we're up to the challenge. So businesses that want to do this, they must be deliberate about it. They must know that they will be challenged, but they must stick to their guns and know that there is a cost to transforming. There will always be a cost to transforming, but it's about whether you are convinced enough that you want to transform or not.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you so much. I'm sure that everyone who's listening has taken some gems from that. Thank you, Tanatswa, for being with us and sharing your valuable lessons. I'm sure it is inspiring and motivating for most on the call today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lamona.
Now, the moment you've all been waiting for. What is the status of women on JSE-listed companies in South Africa? Well, let's hear from Malcolm Larson from Business Engage as he takes us through the 2019 research report.
Lamona, thank you very much, and thank you very much to Barloworld. Again, congratulations on being gender mainstreaming champions. Very, very well done, and very, very well deserved as well. So let's have a look at the status of women on the boards. First thing that we want to point out is, and we keep on saying it every year, is this is a happy report. We look at it from the point of view of, what is being done right, and, what can we take from the report. We don't do, or we try and stay as much as possible for anything negative, Our point of view is quite simple. If you want negative, go and read the newspapers. So we try and make the report realistic, obviously, but we do want it to be uplifting as well. If you're looking for the report, you will find it on the Business Engage website. It's actually easier than what's on the screen there. If you just go onto the Business Engage website, scroll down, you'll find this report, as along with the reports from 2018 and 2017, the two previous reports that we have done. We always put the annexures in, with the report, which then gives you the detail, a lot of the detail that we have worked on. Those annexures will probably only go up tomorrow, over the weekend or so. But the actual report itself, you will be able to get. I believe it's actually on the website as we speak at the moment. And then when you get to the report, reading the report, we have the figures that for 2019, but we've also, in many instances, given you the figures for 2018 and 2017 side by side. So it's very easy for you to just have a glance and see what the change has been in those years. So obviously the initial figure will be this year's figures. The first figure in the brackets will be the 2018 figures, and the second figure in the brackets, if applicable, will be that second figure, will be 2017. Just a couple of general comments with regards to the report. There's a number of positives, there's a number of negatives. Just like any report, any research, I would ask you to take a very holistic view on it, and don't just isolate one part and say, okay, well, that was good or that was bad. Putting these reports together is more of an art than a science. So, you've got to look at the whole thing together, and I ask you to do that. Because it's the 2019 report, there is no effect whatsoever with regards to COVID-19, as all of the reports would have been for periods prior to the situation that we find ourselves in now. So if you're looking for anything with regards to that obviously is only going to come through next year. What we have put in the forward this year, though, is we have mentioned a number of articles and reports from commentators making note of the effect of COVID-19 this year on gender diversity in general, on gender diversity in boards, whether we're going to go backwards, forwards, what's going to happen. It's probably far too early to tell with regards to that. There's some good things happening. A number of you would have seen that Citigroup have announced the first female CEO. That's the first female CEO for themselves, and it's also the first female CEO on Wall Street. So that is obviously a good move, a good role model, but in itself, is that enough? Well, maybe not, but you need to look at the pros and the cons. Then just something I do want to mention, and it's actually not in the report itself, and it does follow on from the interview that Lamona has just done with Barloworld, is those of you who look at the Bloomberg Gender Index, that covers about 325 companies globally. In the latest report, there are 8 South African companies, JSE-listed companies. All 8 are mining houses. So, we tend to look at the mining sector as a very, very difficult sector, and I'm sure it is. But it's amazing how, out of all of the South African companies that are on the index, they're all mining houses. Barloworld themselves do a lot of work in the construction mining industry. So it just goes to show that you can be in a very, very difficult sector and you can get it right. Conversely, you can be in what many may say is an easier sector and maybe not be quite as good as perhaps you would want to be. So why do we do this research? Two reasons. The second reason is because there's very little information out there. But the first reason is that we're looking to stimulate the debate. We're looking to stimulate the conversation. These reports, apart from what Tuesday Consulting has commissioned in part 3 of the report, they're not academic reports as such. They are there to give information, they're there to look at trends, but they are there that we can say that we appear to be doing well, how are we doing it well? That we appear not to be doing so well, why not? And then sharing that information. So we stopped having that siloed approach and we look at it from the point of view of South Africa Inc. and we get ourselves back to a situation where we get a thriving economy again, which quite frankly we all have a right to and we all deserve. So that is why we do the research. It's open to everybody. Please, when you get it, you can copy it as much as you want. You can send it to whoever you want. The more widely it's distributed, the better. So please feel free. So what's the difference between this year's report and previous reports? For those of you who have read the previous reports, two main areas of departure. As we did note last year, we are no longer reporting on director rotations. So where you have non-executive directors rotating in terms of the JSE requirements, company memorandum of incorporations, King 4, etc., we've proved conclusively that director rotations per se is not changing the gender landscape. Now, that's true for men and for women. Since about 2013, we have looked at over 1,000 director rotations, and apart from people being age barred, apart from people not making themselves available, generally, if somebody stands for re-election, they get re-elected. And as I say, that's not gender specific, that works for males and females, but the companies are not using direct rotations as such to alter the gender balance of the boards. In all of the research that we've done over the 1,000 rotations, there has been one change. That was a couple of years ago, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. One of the property companies listed on the JSE, they announced in their integrated annual report that 2 of the male board members were standing down in favour of 1 female. Yes, ladies, you heard me right. 2 men stand down, 1 lady takes the job. I'm not going there. You can't make any inferences whatsoever about a woman being twice as good as the men. So that we're not going to do. The other thing this year is that we've added the analysis from Tuesday Consulting. We said right at the beginning of the research that we were starting very much on the quantitative side. We were setting the benchmarks. We were looking at the whats rather than the whys and the hows. And we said that we would look at the qualitative side of it once we got the series started. True to that, this year we are pleased to partner with Tuesday Consulting, executive search firm who have been members of the 30% Club almost since the beginning, if not right from the beginning, but very long-standing members of the 30% Club. And Tuesday says that they would like to, as part of what they do, is to have a look at the qualitative side of it, and that they have done. They Wendy and Sulu will give you more information on that just now. They're also going to do an interview that they will tell you about, or Lamone will tell you about in a little while. So we then have that part of the research this year that we haven't had in previous years, and that is a welcome addition, I must admit. So the methodology, how do we do the research? The research is taken, apart from what Tuesdays do, and they do that on a one-on-one interviews, but the rest of the information is taken solely from the company's integrated annual reports. And that is why the research is always historical, because we are looking at 2019, 1st of January 2019 to the 31st of December 2019. There are a good number of companies that only do their reports in December. That's the end of their financial year. So by the time they get their end of the financial year, by the time they get their reports done, by the time they get them published, we then have a look at them. That is why that we do the research launch later in the following year. So we only use that information from the reports, and the reason for that is that not only does the company have to have a gender policy, they have to report on it to their stakeholders, and almost exclusively that it's the reports where they do that. And we'll mention that a little bit more about the reports just now. So let's start now having a look at the detail. Yeah, so like who have we analysed this year? There's 330 companies on the JSE at the time of the report. Now, obviously that is very dynamic. Yeah, so like the listings on the JSE changes from time to time, as with any other exchange. New companies come on, companies get delisted, companies get suspended. So whilst it's very dynamic, at the time of looking at the various reports, there was 330 companies on the JSE. Of those, 17 were suspended. If they're suspended at that time, we don't look at them. Coincidentally, also 17 reports were not found on the internet. No, the first year that we had that, I found that quite amazing, that you could have a listed company and you can find anything on Google except these reports. I don't understand that. I don't understand how you can have a company that takes the public's money and yet you can't find any information out on them on what today is so commonplace. But that's as it may be. There are then 5 companies that we've excluded because they're part of a group. So we look at the group rather than the actual companies. So that then means that there's 291 companies that we looked the integrated annual reports, and we go through every single one of those reports. Of those reports, 53 companies this year did not report on their gender policy. Now, that is actually quite surprising and quite disappointing, because you'll see there in the first year it was 19%. And at the time, we thought that was very good, to have 19% not reporting in the first year of a regulation. We thought was quite high. Deloitte did a report, a global research, a good number of years ago, and they came to the conclusion that for a company, a listed company, globally, to comply with legislation, it normally takes them the best part of 5 years, for whatever reason. So we were thinking, well, that's good. If we can get 81% complying in the first year, that was very good. Then next year, well, we've halved the number of people who weren't reporting. And now this year, we're back up to basically where we started in the first year. And I must admit, we haven't delved into the research to find why that should be. The only explanation that I can come up with is that companies that have reported previously have maybe decided, look, we've told everybody that we've got the policy, we've told everybody what the policy is, we've got nothing else to report, therefore we're not going to say anything about it. Always bearing in mind, and we're going to come to this again a little bit later on, always bearing in mind that for companies to do their integrated annual report, they have to put a lot of information into hopefully a very small amount of space. So when you're talking about a gender policy, your space that you have to do that is quite limited. So maybe they decided because of lack of space, they would give it a miss year this year. I don't know, but we're certainly hoping that next year that figure does reverse. So of new opportunities for women on boards in 2019, we're estimating that there's 56 opportunities in 50 companies. Now, for those, especially for those of you who are new, how do we come to that assertion? Well, sometimes it's easy because the company tells us. If the company has a board of 10 and they have 10 males and no females, and they set a target of 20% women on boards, then you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work out that there's 2 opportunities for women within those companies. Sometimes it's not as easy as that, because they don't specifically tell you what their policy is, other than, yes, we're very keen on it, we're looking at it, the nominations committee is very serious about it, and they say all the right things. They're a fairly large board, and they may have no women on the boards. So I think it's safe to say that there is at least one opportunity within that company, if not more. So you can take an educated guess that, well, yes, okay, yeah, there are opportunities there. So when we look at that, we look at a mix of hard facts, because that's what they've told us, and assessments of the size of the board, the number of women in the board at the moment. If it's a board of 4 people, they're all male, you can see that they've all been there for the last 20 years. The chances are that unless somebody dies, they're probably not going to change that board anytime soon. So that's how we look at the opportunities. We're saying this year there's 56 in 50 companies. Now, if you add those together from what we have said in 2017 and 2018, we are now saying that 191 positions have been identified as being available for women on boards on the JSE. We are not saying at this stage when those positions are going to be available, because obviously it varies. Some of the companies are saying, well, we only need one female, and we are actively looking at it now. We're telling you we're looking at it, so we want to make that position available right at the moment. Others will say to you, we are looking to get 40% women on board, but over a 3-year period or a 5-year period, or a certain time frame. So the positions they've been identified. When they're going to come up, that is anybody's guess. But 191 positions in the 291 companies that we've looked at this year, and that's round about the same for the last couple of years. So that is the work we're looking at the moment. It is a much, much better position now than previously. We can debate whether it's going fast enough, and we'll look at that just now, but that's the position as it is right now. So we've mentioned the figures for 17 and 18. What's happened to those opportunities? Well, it's not something that to date we have looked at a lot because we think it's too early. As I've just said, a lot of them are saying, yes, we're going to appoint the women to the board, but over a period of time. But what we can say for certainty is that since 2017, 31 positions of those positions have been realised, and 2018, 11 of those positions have been realised. That's the good side of it. We've also had, like one or two companies that have actually gone slightly backwards. Well, again, you can understand that. If you have two women on your board and one of them decides that they want to resign for whatever reason, well, it may take you time to, to refill that position on the board. So we can quite expect that is going to happen every now and again. Also, there's a couple of the companies that we've said would have positions that have been delisted. So they're going to go off the statistics. That doesn't mean to say that there's no opportunity for the women on the boards, but they're just not going to be shown on our reports in the future. So that is something that we can see that companies are saying, they're putting into the public that this is what we are doing, and they are also doing what they say that they are doing in many cases. When we looked at it, when we looked at Lord Davis, certainly previously, we started looking at the golden skirts. Now, for those of you who have not heard of that expression previously, that is, okay, we're going to, you're going to get one woman who is going to get so many positions on so many boards because of influence, because of political influence, because of who that person knows. But you are going to get one or two people, and they're just going to be given board appointment after board appointment after board appointment. I don't know how many of you remember, but when Cyril Ramaphosa was back into mainstream politics at the highest level, he had to give up his directorships, and I forget the figure, but it was something like 171 directorships he gave up. That's a lot. We're finding that's not happening in this country. That the new appointments they tend to be one-offs. There's very, very few women on the JSE that are holding JSE-listed appointments that are numerous. They may hold other board appointments that we don't know about, but on the JSE-listed boards, it has been spread very, very evenly across all of the companies. And just to go on to that point, this is from Lord Davis's, this was his final year report in 2015, and this is something that we're looking at and we think we're seeing at the moment, is that it's not the usual suspects in the UK. And this was for the FTSE 100 for the 4 years, that instead of having your accountants and your attorneys and people from the private sector, the FTSEs were appointing academics. They were appointing people who run not-for-profit boards, large ones, obviously. Now, running a company is one thing. Running a company and then looking for the money as well is maybe a little bit more difficult. Government boards, private boards, high-flying entrepreneurs. So the net was being spread wider, and we think we're starting to see that happening in this country as well. Not the same old, same old. So we're also saying at the moment there's no opportunity at 55 companies. Now, I said at the beginning, there's positives and the negatives. And you can look at this two ways. One is you can say, okay, there's no opportunity because the opportunities have already been filled, which is good. Or you can turn around and say, well, there's no opportunity because maybe, and I'm not saying that this is happening, but maybe you're getting a company saying, all right, how many women have we got on board? 20%. Okay, well, our target is 15%. Thank you very much. We've met our target and there's no opportunity. I'm not saying that that is happening, but it could be a possibility. But at the moment, there's no opportunity on 55 companies. You can read that either way. Gender linked to race. Now, this one we find quite interesting because not long after the JSE says that you will have a gender policy and report on it, they also said that you will have a race policy at board level and report on it. And we were of the opinion that a lot of companies would merge the two. And they would say, okay, we were looking at race and gender. We are going to merge it. So we are looking at women and we are looking at women of colour. We're actually finding that that is not happening. There's very, very few companies that are publicly stating that that is what they are doing. They are saying, this is our gender policy, this is our race policy. And more often than not, they're different. So their race policy, they may say, okay, we've put targets in place and our race policy is 40% and our gender target is 30%. So they clearly are not looking at the two, and we thought that there'd be more people doing that. It didn't happen last year and it hasn't happened again this year. So how are people going about, how are the companies going about assessing these opportunities? Roughly 1/3 are actually setting targets. Many companies are just saying, no, we've got a policy and our policy is we give it to the nominations committee, and every time that we want a new director, well, they'll tell us what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. But 1/3 have set the stall out and they've said, okay, thank you very much. We've looked at it, we've thought about it, and what we believe is appropriate for our board is whatever it may be, either in terms of number or in terms of percentages. So we're looking at 104 up from 81 last year, and of those that have set targets, 62 have already achieved those. Now, as I alluded to just now, that doesn't mean to say that there's been 62 appointments, because it could very well be that companies have set their targets in line with what they've already got at the moment, and that's why you're seeing that figure. So how many companies are looking at parity on the board? You'll see on the top figure there that it's gone down slightly. I don't think that's too much to be concerned about. As I said before, it happens. If you get one or two women who are who resign for very, very good reasons, then you're going to alter the balance of the board, aren't you? And it could very well be that the board hasn't had time to have a look at it, or in their wisdom they decided that they're going to replace that female with a male for very good reason. So I don't think that's too much to be concerned about at the moment. The one that interests me is the second one, is the near parity achieved. Now, let me explain what we mean by that. What we're saying there is that if the board changes a board position, one board position, then they get parity. So if a male board member steps down and the company replaces that male board member with a female board member, then they have parity. And that is quite, and we're not saying that those companies have that intention. All we are saying that if they did do that, that's what you would see. And also, obviously, when we look at parity, many boards have odd numbers of members. So, if there's a board of 11 and it's split 6-5, well, that's parity. Okay, this is the interesting one. No women on boards. Very, very slight decrease. So, ladies, if you come back and watch the presentation in 14 years' time, at this rate, we will be down to no women on boards. If we go back to the UK, FTSE 100 now, I think they said they were sit on two women, two boards with no women on. That to me should go down over the very near future, as boards do their turnarounds. Okay, that lady there is Delise Wilson. She's the chief executive of the Hampton Alexander Review, and she was a little bit miffed in one of her reports, because she's saying that the companies need to realise that one and done is little better than none. So she was having a look at those companies that have got one female board member, like the chairman we saw earlier on, who says he's got his one, he's done, and somebody else's turn. So they were looking at the one and dones. At the moment, we are looking at 50 companies that's got one female board member. Now, whilst we've said one and done on there, and that's down from 67 last year, we are not at all saying that these companies are done. We can't say that. We don't have the information. It could very well be that they started on 0, they've now got to 1, maybe next year they'll have 2 or 3. So, all we can do is say that we would like that figure to go down and go down by quite a bit continuously. And then at the end, we can then say, okay, we're then done. Just a very, very quick look at board ratios. Of the 291 companies that we looked at, 2,200 board members. In total, 24% female. Of the executives, 13% female. And NEDs, 29% females. I think we mentioned it in the forward in the UK. Oh no, I won't say that. I can't remember if it was CEOs or executives. But anyway, that was 13% for executives. So that gives you an idea of the number of board members we have, and that will relate to the opportunities and the non-opportunities within these organisations. Then just going back to the Hampton Alexander, they were looking at the 350 boards and the executive committees, but also the direct reports. And they were looking at 33% on there by 2020. And we'll look at it now, but that's something that at the moment, all we're doing is looking at the boards. If we want to increase the NEDs, ideally you increase the executives. If you want to increase the executives, you've got to increase the committees. If you're increasing the committees, increase the direct reports. So perhaps that's something that we should be looking at here. And just as a matter of interest, that 33% by 2020, they're going to miss it. They were sitting on about 28% last year, but they're still increasing. Okay, communicating with stakeholders. We said right at the beginning, we don't do negative. There's an exception to every rule. This is the exception. We find it very disappointing that the companies are not communicating with the stakeholders well with regards to their gender policy. Now, what I mean by that is I think this year there was about 9 companies that said, we've got a policy, here's the address where you can find it. We don't have time, we don't have space to say too much in the report, but go there and you can have the 3-4 pages, whatever it is, of the policy. Only 9 companies are doing that. And it's very easy for the companies to say, quick, this is what we're doing. If you've got more interest, go and have a look here. It is, I know from experience, and Fano knows as well, to go onto a company website and try and find the gender policy on a lot of companies is difficult. And people just don't have time to do it, and nor the inclination, to be honest. Just a couple of final thoughts before we wrap up. Just going back to the forward for the Hampton Alexander Review, the guys make a point. It says, our departments have worked across a number of initiatives, including through the industrial strategy, to support companies to achieve more balanced leadership. We have mentioned it, more work, more interaction between business and government. Companies, other countries get it right. The UK is quite good. Australia is very good. Maybe that's something that we need to look at in this country. They launched a new men as change agents board, and it's been launched, which will lead to support to both the Hampton Alexander and the Parker reviews. That was Sir John Parker did a review. I'm not so sure what that review was all about. But you have men as change agents. That is men in influential positions who are using their position to change the not only the gender landscape in the UK, but also the minority and the ethnic landscape as well. So they started the men of change agents. Australia has had the male champions of change for many, many years now. They've got about 235 members. The NASPER CEO is a member there. They do a lot of really, really good work there, and they've been going on for quite a while. Maybe that's something that we should be looking at. We have lots of influential men. I mean, a lot of our good supporters of the 30% Club are men, influential men. Maybe that's something that we must look at more. Then, just a negative comment. I said that they're going to miss out in the UK. They're sitting at 28% rather than the 30% they're looking at. And they say 4 years on, too few women have been appointed into senior leadership roles of the FTSE 100, with around 2/3 of all available roles still going to men. And what they're saying is if that carries on like that, they're going to miss their targets. So that's something that we need to be careful in this country that we're getting that right. So where to next? Well, in line with what we're doing with the Gender Mainstreaming Awards, there's a possibility we do a drive into Africa. We're looking at what the JSE is doing. Well, what are they doing on other exchanges throughout the continent? It's not that easy. The Nairobi Securities Exchange, trying to get information from there is very, very difficult. But just because it's difficult doesn't mean to say we won't do it. We need to have a look at the number of female chairs and CEOs, the heads of committees and which committees they're looking at. Mentioned earlier, the direct reports, that's something we should be looking at. We'll certainly be talking to Wendy and Sulu with regards to the qualitative research and seeing what are we going to be doing next year in this regard. We will check our previous assumptions. As we've said previously, we're saying this is the number of people who are getting onto positions for those boards, but how many are actually getting on there? We're in a position to start doing that, so we'll start doing that now. And where are they coming from? Is it the usual suspects? No disrespect, but is it your attorneys and your chartered accountants, or are we looking at more diverse? And then get involved. Please, if anybody has an appetite, if you want to get involved in this research, the more the merrier. We will talk to anybody as to what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And so if you would like to be involved with us, you're more than welcome. I just want to go back to that slide. It says right at the beginning that we don't do negative. Anybody who knows Business Engage will know that we will never end a presentation on a negative. That's a negative. Just so that we don't end on a negative, a couple of slides back, I showed you the men as change agents in the UK. That is men supporting the women in getting onto the board. The only problem is, ladies, we need your support. that is the website for the men of change agents, and it can't be reached. So, and it is the correct URL, by the way. I've actually checked it on the government website. So, ladies, the men need help supporting you. And on that note, back over to Lamona. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. I love it. I love the part about the 2 men stepping down and the 1 woman taking the job, and definitely here where we need to help the men to be change agents. So we're up for a little break now, and we should be back by 16:40. So at 20 to 5, if we can come back, so you can have a quick leg stretch wherever you are. And when you come back, we'll be diving into the qualitative aspect of the numbers and all the quantitative stuff that Malcolm just shared. We're in for some great insights from Accenture and some great tips that companies can take on how they can progress this work forward. And then we have some really great snippets on the UN Women coming up. So you don't want to miss this. Please join us again back at 16:40. Thank you. And we're back. Welcome back. And I now hand you over to Telo Nkatana from Tuesday Consulting, who are going to take you through an exciting piece. So I'm not going to give it away. Over to you, ladies.
Thank you. So as introduced, Tuesday Consulting has partnered with Business Engage and 30% Club Southern Africa to conduct a qualitative research with the support of an academic consultant in exploring whether gender policies and practices enable and foster recruitment, development and retention of women on non-executive directors on JSE-listed companies. The aim of this research was to provide contextual insight from the CEOs and chair of nomination committees to establish how they have implemented a gender policy and practices to understand their recruitment, development, and retention strategies. International research shows that there are positive impacts on having boards with greater female representation, such as increased sustainability reporting, which may be viewed as a core element of good corporate governance and board independence. In 2018, PwC Gender Gap Report ranked South Africa 70th for the gender representation on boards and only 32.1% female representation. So, we've identified a number of JSE-listed companies to approach for this research and interviewed the relevant executives across 12 sectors of the JSE-listed companies to establish how individual boards, policies, and practices served their purposes. One or some of our findings of this research inquiry is that while gender diversity and transformation as a greater whole are embraced by JSE-listed companies and regarded as critical and beneficial, the priority when appointing non-executive board members is primarily candidates with the right skills, competencies, and experience across or are appointed. Amongst those that were interviewed included the non-executive chairman of Liberty Holding. He has agreed to discuss this topic with us today, and I'll hand over to Wendy to introduce him and take us through the conversation. Thank you. Wendy?
Thank you. Thanks so much, Solo. We are delighted to have Jacko Marie join us live today for a short Q&A session. Jacko is currently the non-executive deputy chairman of the Standard Bank Group and non-executive chairman of Liberty Holdings. He is also a non-executive board member of the Pembani Group. In April 2018, Jacko was appointed by President Ramaphosa as Special Envoy on Investment to the President of the Republic of South Africa. Jacko, thank you for taking the time out today in your busy schedule to join us. We really appreciate your participation.
That's great to be here. Thank you.
As you are aware, over the last few months, Tuesday Consulting has conducted qualitative research that explored the recruitment, development, and retention of board members on JSE-listed companies. Jacko, in your experience, how has the gender transformation agenda impacted, if at all, the nomination, election, and appointment of non-executive board members?
Look, Winnie, I think it really has impacted it a lot. But interesting enough, if you go back to the early 2000s with the establishment of Black economic empowerment charters and then the codes, it's interesting that in South Africa, it was okay to be explicit about targets around race at that time. And that's spilled over, I think, quite easily into gender. So in a lot of other countries, this was kind of taboo. It wasn't a good thing to set targets. I think we crossed the hurdle of setting targets, a long time ago in this country. So I think it has been positive, and it has influenced the way one thinks about appointment of non-execs.
Okay, good. Thank you for sharing that with us, Jacko. In your opinion, what are the competencies that the board currently considers when assessing a candidate's fit for a non-executive opportunity? And secondly, as part of the same question, is the gender composition of the board also taken into consideration at this time?
Okay, so in terms of skills, if you think about it, I mean, just what are the skills that you obviously have to have on a board? You know, you've got audit committees and audit responsibilities, so you need people with that kind of skill. Pretty much all companies have risk committee these days. What are the risks that the business faces? So you need people with those sort of skills. We have to have remuneration committees, so you need people with remuneration skills. Most companies now also have to have an IT committee, so skills around IT. And then social ethics and transformation would be something else that most companies would have. And then you have the specialist kind of skills depending on the company. So in a life insurance company like Liberty, we have to have an actuarial committee, and therefore we have to have a number of actuarial skills. And of course, so those are sort of governance and control functions, but at the end of the day, you're running a business, and so therefore you need people that are good at strategies, that can help you with a strategy for the business. And it's quite hard to strategize about a business if you don't understand the industry at all. So if I look at what we publish at Liberty in terms of skills, we publish next to each person's name one of 8 skills: governance, strategy, financial services in our case, insurance, risk, remuneration, knowledge of sub-Saharan Africa, and accounting and financial reporting. So it's a mixture of hard skills and also business strategy. Now, of course, as you're looking at those things, you're looking for candidates. Of course, in this day and age, you're always saying, well, we need to try and make sure that we are balancing race and gender in particular. So those would be, and you do it in that context as you look at the various candidates that you're considering.
Great. So, Jacko, what I'm hearing is that there's a diverse, complex set of skills that each board requires, depending on which sector they operate in, and that also in your case, you do look at the gender composition, gender and race composition of the board.
Absolutely, yeah.
An interesting question I think for quite a lot of our listeners on this event today is, in your experience, do boards make accommodations for aspiring or less seasoned non-executive directors?
Yes, I think it definitely. Certainly, I mean, I can give you the example of Liberty. If I look at the women on our board, the current women on average are aged 50, and we're about to appoint somebody who's 45, and that compares to the men on the board who average age about 62. So I think it's interesting because of perhaps the history of our country and fewer women having had big executive positions. It's harder to find women that have got deep non-executive experience, that have retired and so forth. So I think we are finding a trend that there are more younger non-executives, particularly women, and I'm sure that is because there are quite a lot of women who want the exposure, want to contribute, but also enjoy having a portfolio of board positions and not executive responsibility. So we're definitely seeing that. And if you think about things like this whole world that we're in now, digital, it's important for pretty much every company. You have to have a digital strategy as part of whatever you're doing. And to find people with digital skills that can contribute, you're not going to find people in their 50s and 60s with those skills typically. They're much younger people. So I think that I found interesting.
Yeah. I do think that the digital component that you've mentioned is a critical one that could shift the age range or the average age on the boards of JSE-listed companies. So that's a very good point. Jacko, as today's event is focused on ensuring equality of women represented on the boards of JSE-listed companies, what would your advice be to aspiring female non-executive directors?
Well, I think first and foremost, building on what I said earlier about skills, I don't think you want to rely on the fact that you're a woman. I think you have to earn your place, earn your selection. Of course, everyone knows that companies are under pressure to find competent women to appoint to the board, so that's working in your favor, but don't rely on it. You have to have some hard skills. I think just having general, call it governance experience or skills is not that valuable. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the types of skills that companies are looking for are concrete hard skills, which are, have to be earned. I think it makes an enormous difference in most companies to be numerate and to have developed your financial and numeracy skills, even if you're not a finance person per se. The world today, everything gets translated back to numbers, and it's very tough. I've seen it for people who don't have a reasonable feel for numbers to get through the huge quantities of board papers and figures. You have to understand the business. I've said this earlier, but I would struggle to be a board member of a mining company just because I know nothing about mining. So I think one should recognize what industries you have knowledge about and what you don't. So I think it is important to not just look for general board positions, but to say, look, I'm going to concentrate in these areas where I understand something or I've studied or whatever. I also think it's very important to talk to people who are already non-executives and try and gain from their experience, learn from them. So I think having I don't want to say mentors, but people that have sat on boards, sharing their frustrations, their ideas with you, I think is positive. But finally, what is the defining attribute of a good board member is wisdom. And, there are a lot of people who are young, who are wise, and there are lots of people with lots of experience who are none the wiser, if I can put it that way. So we look, it comes through in tough times on boards. The people that are making the sensible comments, the sensible suggestions, their wisdom comes through. So that's perhaps something to think about. Am I developing wisdom as I aspire to sit on a board?
Thank you, Jacko. And I think that's very, very true and reflective of the research that Tuesday Consulting did. So when everybody gets a chance to delve into the report, they will see a lot of what you've said. And also, to your point, incredibly tough times at the moment, and wisdom must be a key contributor at the board level. So thank you for your insights and your words of advice. Thank you for your support and participation in this initiative. We truly appreciate it. Thank you, Jacko.
Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you.
That one.
Okay, then. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tuesday Consulting. And as I promised you, you are in for great insights from Accenture with my past colleague, Ketiwe Nkuna, who is currently the Inclusion and Diversity Leader and Corporate Citizenship Leader for Accenture in Africa. So we're getting into the Getting to Equal report that Accenture has produced for a few years, and this I'm definitely going to read, right? So this includes research across 28 countries, where we found that organizations are at an inflection point. So today's workforce cares increasingly about workplace culture and believes it is critical to helping them thrive in the workplace, and a majority of leaders, actually 63%, believe an inclusive workplace culture is vital to the success of their business. Another finding in that report, Katiwe, says that there's a perception gap, right? 70% of leaders feel that creating empowering environments where people have a sense of belonging, yet only 40% of employees agree with this. and their proportion of employees who do not feel included in the organization is 9 times higher than leaders believe. So there's lots of great nuggets in this report, and I believe it is accessible.
It is fully accessible. It is actually on our website, accenture.com.
Okay, great. So can you give us a bit of background into the Getting to Equal research? How long has it been going, and what does it set out to achieve?
Yeah. So Accenture has actually studied, equality in the workplace and the actual impact of equality in the workplace. So this research started in 2018, and in 2018, the key findings were that when women rise, men also rise. And actually, in organizations that foster a truly inclusive culture, women are 4 times likely to actually reach senior manager to director levels, and men are twice as likely. In 2019, the findings were actually that an inclusive organization and inclusive culture actually catapults and enables innovation. So organizations that truly foster an inclusive organization and inclusive culture are 11 times likely to be more innovative than their organizations. And lastly, this year, spot on in terms of the observations that you've actually shared right now, where there is a clear perception gap, where 2/3 of leaders actually believe that they are fostering an inclusive culture, yet it is not actually felt by the people working in the organization. So in essence, if organization can work towards closing that perception gap, the revenues globally will increase by more than 33%.
Wow, that is amazing. I love that you have actually articulated what everyone knows to be true. Leaders think that they're doing a great job, and employees not really feeling it. So I like it. Thank you. So let's go back to this 2018 report. Accenture identified 40 factors that are proven to influence advancement, and you organize them into 3 pillars. Do you want to tell me what the pillars are?
So it's leadership,
Yep.
it's bold leadership,
Comprehensive action, right?
comprehensive action, and an empowering environment.
So, given the situation that we are in currently, right, if you were discussing these factors under these 3 pillars with the JSE listed company, with the boards of JSE listed companies, do you think that these factors still hold true?
I absolutely do believe that these factors still hold true, Lamona. I think there are 3 key enablers when it comes to fostering, and sustaining a culture of inclusivity. And those 3 are absolutely the key. I think when we look at exemplary leadership, it is critical to have exemplary leadership across all lenses and dimensions of diversity. So at a leadership level, it's important for women to actually see leaders that are exemplary, leaders that are bold, leaders that are courageous, that are actually charting the way forward, whether it's gender, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's sexuality, any form of diversity. The second component is really around monitoring and evaluation and actually setting rigorous targets. So it's important to actually set targets that everyone is going to be held accountable to. When we talk about targets, it's not just setting the targets and you forget them and you put them away. It's important to make sure that on an annual basis, if there are 3-year targets, on an annual basis, you are actually monitoring and checking how we are tracking. We all know that what doesn't get measured doesn't get done.
100%. Love it, love it. So you also spoke about culture markers.
Culture makers.
Culture makers in the report, who are a small group of leaders who are ahead of the curve. And these leaders, and I'm just going to read from what the report says, they say, they do, and they drive. I really like that. I like that you can remember that. Say, do, and drive. So they say building a more inclusive culture is an organizational priority. So they are saying that, right? And then they recognize the importance of culture and identify change as a personal goal. And thirdly, and most importantly, drive. They reward people for building a more inclusive culture. And we heard that in what Malcolm spoke about in the report, right? The driving and also with Tuesday
Rewarding.
Consulting, rewarding that behavior. So how easy do you think it is for board members to be culture makers in the boardroom? And is it something that they have to advocate for in life generally? So within the boardroom and outside of the boardroom?
Yeah, I think board members actually have a very unique position of influence, as a result of them being that high up in the organization. And through their positions of influence, there's an opportunity to actually be a lobbyist, and an evangelist for inclusion and diversity. So the main role that board members can play, of course, board members don't do the implementation, but the board members can actually plant the seeds and actually question. By questioning, you actually force people to reflect, so continuously questioning and actually assisting the organizations and the executives, and holding them accountable to actually creating the inclusive environments. Earlier on, Yaku spoke about the ethics and compliance committees. In most organizations, that is where the work of inclusion and diversity actually sits, where the subcommittee is actually focusing in terms of really drilling down to hold the organizations accountable. So it's really important that as a board member, you are aware of the responsibility, and the opportunity you actually have to enable and accelerate change, by actually planting that seed, question, and then request continuous feedback in terms of how is the progress going. You presented the last time your transformation strategy, your inclusion and diversity strategy. How are you tracking? And what are the gaps? How can we mitigate those gaps? So it is not something that is easy. We all know that the journey of transformation and the journey of women empowerment and inclusion is quite a lengthy one. And I think what the least thing that we can do is tire. We need to ensure that we keep focused and absolutely advocate for it.
Yeah, great. So tell me about what advice would you give to a board member who is told that they need to advocate for this to be a culture maker in their life general, outside of the boardroom? What advice, if someone's keen to know, how do I get started? What do I do? I'm doing all I can within the boardroom. You want me to do something outside now? Tell me what that is. What would you say to them?
So I think it links back to really us educating ourselves, and also understanding why inclusion and diversity is important, why inclusivity is important. So the main advice is really to be curious, go out there, question, find out. There's also a level of discomfort when it comes to certain topics around inclusion and diversity. There's discomfort around maybe people with disabilities. Be curious and actually go out and reach out to those communities. In the Pride community, reach out to minority groups, reach out to women, and also take it on yourself to actually study and know more about inclusivity. There's a quote that I love that says, diversity is being invited to the party and inclusivity is being asked to dance, so that's what it's all about. It's really about us creating an environment and a culture that is as inclusive as possible. And I think as Accenture, that is actually our ambition, to create and become the most inclusive organization in the world.
Wonderful, brilliant. Thank you so much. So there you have it. The report, the 2018 report on getting to equal, which is accessible to everyone. We do encourage you to go and have a look at it. And now, I'd like to introduce you to Masachaba Tekane, who has been recently appointed as the CEO of Business Engage Consulting. Congratulations.
Thank you, Lamona.
I've had the privilege of meeting Masachaba through the United Nations Women Empowerment Principles Initiative, and you're here today to talk to us about that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. Are we joined by Anne today?
She's supposed to.
Hello. Hello, Anne. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for
It's
joining
been
us.
such a wonderful conversation. It's been great to hear you, to
Wonderful.
listen to that story and to listen to Accenture's dream to be the most equal company in the world.
Absolutely. We're loving it. We're loving it. And we're so glad that we have you on board to tell us a little bit about the United Nations Women Empowerment Principles. So, Anne, do you want to tell us what exactly is the United Nations Women Empowerment Principles and how does it relate specifically to the JSE listed companies?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Business Engage, for and all the partners for pulling together such an incredible event today. So, UN Women partnered with the UN Global Compact. And the UN Global Compact, as you know, set by former Secretary General Kofi Annan, is really to drive business to be responsible in terms of development and you know social responsibility. And so what we did as UN Women was to partner with the Global Compact globally and establish the Women Empowerment Principles. And so these are principles, there's 7 principles, and these are the principles that we believe will, you know, are the real indicators of equality in a business. So these principles, 7 principles, looking at leadership, looking at the equality in the workplace that includes equal pay, for instance, and what the kind of HR policies are in the workplace. It looks at the harassment and violence in the workplace, which is a new issue, occupational health in the workplace, but also enterprise development and supplier development. And training and CSI and reporting. So these 7 principles we believe would, you know, create companies that are fully gender equal. The private sector for us is such a big and important driver of growth in the world, and because of sustainable value chains, this is where it happens. The different business models, equality for us means business, and so it's crucial for us that Johannesburg Stock Exchange listed companies, that companies that are wanting to be recognized as companies that really believe in equality are women empowerment principled companies, and that they're signatories. We have over 60 companies that are signatories now. We're growing that number as quickly as we can. And the intention is to really see that these companies walk their talk. There's a very strong business case for gender equality, and I think this is really we want to talk about.
This is really good, and I love that it is a guide for companies of how to get started, and you give them the 7 focus areas for them to get started and have lots of tools to help with that. But before I get ahead of myself, let me ask this question, Anne. How do we compare in South Africa to other countries globally?
You know, South Africa has done really well in terms of, you know, well, I mean, let me just start off by saying this year, 25 years since Beijing, in truth, no one has reached parity. No one has reached gender equality. And so we have over, you know, 3,700 companies around the world who are signatories of the Women's Empowerment Principles. In South Africa, we're at 80 now, up from 54 just about a year ago. So, you know, we have companies who are signatories, but I think one of the things that for us has been a big concern is to be able to move the signing to actually demonstrating that you are a business that is fully embracing all of the principles. It is not enough that we have a company that has strong leadership at the top and that has 2 or 3 women on the boards. What we want to see is companies that are truly embracing every single one of these 7 principles. And so what we've seen in South Africa is we've had many companies who are signatories, but haven't done anything more than be a signatory. So what we want is to move the companies. So we want to, you know, grow the number, but we also want to deepen the number. So we have much better indicators in terms of what companies are actually doing.
All right, great. With that, and I believe, Masachaba, you've been very instrumental in socializing these principles with JSE-listed companies in South Africa, and you've been encouraging them. For me, I think it's people don't know. You don't know what you don't know, and so you can't get involved. What has your experience been so far in the socializing and getting more participation from South African companies?
Yeah. So the response from these companies that we've started engaging has been quite positive and encouraging. And so Business Engage has been contracted by the UN Women to assist the UN Women together with the UNGC to promote the 7 women empowerment principles. And so the project has got 4 deliverables. One is to mobilize companies to adopt and become signatories to the 7 principles. And then secondly is to, as Anne said, there are companies already that are based in South Africa that are signatories to the UN Women Empowerment Principles. And currently we've got 80 companies, and Anne will be happy to hear that, because through the mobilization efforts, we've been able to onboard more companies to sign up and become web signatories. And the 4th deliverable is also to identify companies that are making progress and making an impact in terms of driving and advancing gender equality as well as women empowerment in the workplace, in the communities, but also in the marketplace. And the last deliverable talks to establishing a community of practice for SA-based web signatories so that they are able to get support that they need in implementing their commitments. So when we mobilize companies, we are actually seeing more companies being interested in getting to know more about the principles, especially Principle 1 that talks to the importance of leadership in championing gender equality and women empowerment in the workplace, making it a part of their sustainability strategy. The 7 principles are not a campaign that sits on the side of the table. It's everybody's business in the organization if they are to achieve their intended objectives. So companies, when they hear about the 7 principles, they express an intent to adopt them and to also go beyond the adoption, and they commit to implementing their commitment through action plans that they will develop, but also monitoring and reporting on the progress and the impact that they are making.
Mm-hmm. So we've heard that consistently throughout today's session, right?
Yeah.
Setting your targets or setting goals, measuring your progress and being held accountable. And it's a collective effort, you know, of socializing it deeper into the organization.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned communities of practice. What exactly does that entail?
So Anne and her team, as well as the UNGC, has asked us to support them in the establishment of an SA WEBS community of practice. If you look at other regions globally, in America, Asia, Europe, the UN Women has put together a support structure for web signatories to help them along this journey of implementing their commitments. So we will be looking at doing the same in South Africa, where we will develop a community of practice where all companies that are committed to advancing gender equality come together, share knowledge, lessons learned, so that they are able to advance gender equality in their environment. But also companies that are interested in knowing more about the webs that are not signatories will be welcome to also participate in the community of practice so that they get to know more about it, and then hopefully they'll be inspired to sign up and become web signatories as well. So that's something that we are looking at, and in the next few weeks we will have our inaugural meeting where all stakeholders will come together, co-create terms of reference, because the UN Women doesn't want to dictate how the community of practice will be managed. They realize that stakeholders play a critical role in creating an effective structure that will be meaningful. We don't want to just add another initiative. They need to be active participant in shaping the community of practice.
Excellent. I really like that, because then you're making it fit for purpose.
Absolutely.
And you are understanding the local context, because there's no one size fits all, and you're also understanding the socio-economic and the industry context. I think it looks different in different industries, and by partnership we can collectively move forward. Thank you for that. And are there other organs of the UN involved in this initiative?
that again. Are there other organs that do what?
Are there other organs of the United Nations involved in this initiative?
Well, I mean, the thing about the women empowerment principles is that because it's about the gender parity and gender equality within private sector companies, we work with corporate companies and business in every country in the world, and we have all United Nations bodies. And so depending on the country, you know, the partnerships in that country, the kind of work that they do, like for instance, in this country, we do quite a bit of work with business on gender-based violence. And so we have many different UN organizations that are partners with us on this. And of course, we work with CSOs as well to really grow the partnership and make sure that this is embedded across with, you know, multiple stakeholders. I think for me, what is really important about the women empowerment principles is that, you know, after 25 years since Beijing, what we've learned is that what is left really to create change in gender equality across the world are the norms, are the sort of culture within organizations that is largely patriarchal, that is really promoting, you know, that is sort of, very patriarchal. And so we have had to make a case for companies and partners, whether across the UN or in government, to start recognizing how important a role business can play in this gender parity story. The first thing that we have done at UN Women is beginning to, you know, really evaluate the value and the bottom line that gender equality brings to these companies. There was a very important study done by Catalyst about 3 years ago that talked about how companies with higher level female representation in management are those that don't, others that are showing how gender disparity is such a high cost to the economy. The cost of violence is a high cost to productivity, and gender parity is actually a big contributor to the GDP of countries. And so for us, we work very closely with governments on this. So even though we don't have women empowerment principles as such within the government, it is the kind of structure or indicator platform that can be used by governments. So we have governments, we have, you know, smaller companies, we have NGOs who are interested to kind of learn from the work that we do. But in principle, our focus is on corporates. We want corporates to start really pushing for equality. And so that really is our focus. We're looking and hoping that for South Africa, we can hit a couple of hundred companies that would be members of the Women Empowerment Principles, but who are beginning to transform their bottom line. And I will say that one of the reasons that we are having some of these conversations, in fact, with government, is that principle number 5, which is about supplier diversity and enterprise development, is one that actually forces companies to start looking at their actual spend. Because we can have women, we can have parity, we can have, you know, women in senior leadership positions, but they don't buy from women-owned businesses. And when we've looked at the numbers from government side and from the private sector, it is nearly 30% of the GDP of South Africa comes from supply chain businesses. And so we would like, and the president has declared 40% procurement, preferential procurement across the country. So we want companies to buy from women. We want companies to invest in businesses that can supply business, can supply government. So this is another area which, even though it's not really just about a WEPS program, it is about really ensuring that companies and government buy from women. And that's what's going to tell us the real success of companies. Are you putting your money where your mouth is? Because it's one thing to be able to have the numbers. It's another thing to see your bottom line when looking at the real annual reports of companies. Are they investing in women-owned businesses? Are they buying from women? So this is another way in which we're using the women empowerment principles to actually tap into real opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Anne, for that context. And to those watching this event, Or what are you doing and how are you supporting women-owned businesses in your companies? So, Mr. Chaba, for those watching who are not yet involved, what is the process and who should they contact?
They can contact Business Engage because we are busy with the project now and it has actually been extended so that we can reach out to more companies that are interested to know more about the women empowerment principles, what are the benefits of being part of this network, how to join, and the benefits of being a part of this network. So they can contact either the UN Women Office in Pretoria, or they can actually contact Business Engage directly, and we'll be able to facilitate engagements with them to provide them with more information.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. So we're coming to the end of our session. And for those of you who dialed in and have not yet started this journey, I'm sure you have taken golden nuggets from the session of how to get started. You've got the UN empowerment principles, you've got the Accenture report, you've got the report that Malcolm spoke about, the state of gender diversity on JSE-listed companies. So you have quantitative data, you have some qualitative information, and there's no excuse to not get started. And so my ask of everyone today is the time is now and the person is you. This is the problem of our times, and it is a time when we are most enabled to make a change. So please use the platform of your companies, use these resources, get started, and make a difference. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you again to the Eventcast studio. Thank you to Tuesday Consulting and Business Engage for all the great work you do. Please stay safe, stay well, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.